Hi, how you doing? Hey, my name is Michael Govier, and this is the First Day Pod. This is a place where, boy, 4 or 5 years ago, me and my lovely lady, Leanne Hello, started doing this. And I haven't done a show in a minute. That's to say the least. But I did avoid a 1-year pod fade. The last time we did a show together was March 10th, 2024. So it's technically been less than a year. Woohoo! Look, I think I need this show more than ever. Right now, my lovely lady Leanne is quite under the weather. She's recovering right now, so that's why she's not here with me. Otherwise, she would be here with me. And right now, she doesn't even know I'm doing this show, so she might find out about it or see it now, watching me live, and say, wait, what's going on here? What's happening? But originally did this show because we wanted to talk about life, and we're just curious people. We wanted to share honestly about our own lives to learn from others. And hopefully you would say something in the live chats that we have. And this show is live right now, so if you want to jump in and say hello or offer a commentary, please feel free to do so. And one of the big things that's changed is I'm now I'm a licensed therapist. So I think once that happened, I got kind of confused about, should I not do this show anymore? Should I just lay low? Because, there's people who rely on me. I'm doing a show, but yet I'm talking to people privately about their lives. And I would never, of course, confidentiality. I'm never going to share what's going on with my actual clients right now. I would never do that. But I kind of felt I was stuck in the middle right here. Like, hey, I still want to talk about stuff and be honest about it, but I didn't want to give people the wrong idea about myself either. It was a really tough spot to be in here. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I'm just trying to be a straight shooter. Keep it real. When keeping it real goes wrong, you know what happens, right? So I'm live. I'm here now. And I got a lot of problems. That's the other thing, too. As a therapist, you're supposed to be this person that people come to professional advice, right? You're a professional, so we seek you out to help us. But therapists have problems, too. So I'm no different than anybody else, and I never claim to be. And I find it's more difficult and difficult to keep consistent. It's always been my biggest problem. I love life. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm so happy to be alive on this day, even on a shit day in Windsor, Ontario on February 24th, 2025. I'm still grateful to be here. But then I go back and forth. I'll go into I'm so grateful to be here. Let's do everything right now. And then I'll go back into what is the purpose of this existence? Why are we here? This sucks. I was born to live and then to die and then never see anybody again. I go between those two worlds, and that's me. And I have a lot of ups and downs. Being consistent is hard for me. So I may be someone who's a candidate to be regulated by meds, but I'm also somebody, even though I have clients who take meds and I actually suggest them to certain clients, I don't want to take antidepressants, even though they can be helpful to certain people. See, this is what life's all about. Life is just not A and B. It's not binary. It's not black and white. It's not red or yellow or black and yellow. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. It's not that. It's complicated. It's gray. If you don't know that by now, you're either young enough to be that clueless, which is fine, because I was so stupid. I'm still pretty dumb now. But we were talking about this the other day on Palazzo, but you're like 21, 20, 19, 18. You don't know shit. All you have is your gut and your will to just go for the gold or to be whatever you feel you are in that moment. I was the same way. I was no different. I am not excusing myself from any type of advancement than when I was 20 years old. Oh yeah, I really had it figured out. No. So the naivete of youth is wonderful, but usually that means if you don't understand how difficult it can be to function sometimes, you probably haven't lived with a depression for a long time. And I was prescribed antidepressants once. I actually was. When I lived in Maryland in 2018 or 19, the doctor prescribed me citalopram. It's the generic citalopram. It's one of the generics, the Lexapro or whatever the hell it is. The one that starts with a C. What's the one that starts with a C? You guys know that one? Anyways, I didn't take it. And I was at my lowest point around that point too in my life. There's no doubt about it. 6 years ago, as low as it gets. Any bitching I'm doing right now pales in comparison to how low things were 6, 7, 8 years ago when I had to sleep on a bed frame because I didn't have a mattress. And see, that's perspective. I have perspective. So I can't complain about that either. You know what I mean? That bed frame was rough. It wasn't a have you ever tried to sleep on a bed frame, not a mattress? It's got ridges. There's gaps. It's painful enough, but I like Ruffles ridges a lot. Man, Ruffles. Ruffles are good. You know, in Canada, they have all dressed Ruffles. I don't like those, but everybody here loves them, but I don't get it. I just like straight Ruffles. I'm just a pure Ruffle purist, I suppose. Ruffles. It's not singular, although it is a bag of multiple chips, so it's Ruffles. Right? I love Ruffles, and that's one of my problems. That's my biggest problem is I have old habits that I have not reformatted. I eat things that I've learned to eat long ago, and really, you know, I'm 44 years old. If you don't know me, I'm a 44-year-old man. So let's see. I've had multiple lives and multiple careers and multiple opportunities to set habits. By the time you get to 44, I think this is a thing I'm just kind of realizing now that the habits, they get really hard to break. And some people are 24 or 33 and they have habits that are already hard to break. That's not true. That is true. But you add another 10 years to a habit, it's just that much harder to break. And if you don't know me, I was in active opioid addiction, okay? So no longer, because I'm not inactive. If I was inactive, hence the word active, I would be currently using opioids, which I am not. But when I was actively using them, I had a routine, you know? I would starve myself, get into a dope sickness, finally get my Vicodin, because that's all I wanted. All I wanted was my Vicodin. I tried heroin. I thought Vicodin was way better. I did. I'm like, why is everyone, Vicodin's the shit. Vicodin's buzz was perfect for me. At least for a while. You know what I mean? But at that time, I take those pills. First, it was 1 or 2, of course. And then I think you've heard the stories. If you're not aware, then you start to take more and more because the tolerance goes up and up and up. And I've said this before, but my max dose was 25 10 milligram Vicodins at once. Those were the greenies. The yellows. They were the yellows. Yeah, the yellows. The white ones were 750s. The yellows were 10 milligrams. And I took 25 of those at a time. That was my dose. I'm not the type of person who wanted to do it throughout the day. Just as my personality seems to have been formatted to have it all coalesce into one all or nothing situation, right? Starve myself all day, finally get that dose, whoop, pop them in my mouth. Then I got to go shopping for my garbage food because we can't eat healthy. I mean, if we're going to be on Vicodin, you might as well eat like shit too, right? So you take that. I go to the store or I go to the fast food run, and it's always multiple fast food stops. You get Burger King burgers, McDonald's fries. That's the ultimate combo. McDonald's has the best fries. Burger King has the better burgers. Although Wendy's has made a run with their burgers. Not bad. But usually it was Burger King burgers with Wendy's, McDonald's fries, not Wendy's. And then, hell, maybe I even might stop through Taco Bell for a bean burrito or a Mexi Melt or some shit. So, but I did that a lot. That's a bad recipe. And this was basically starting around 31. So 30, 31, I started doing this regularly. And I pounded garbage food before that. So that routine, that habit was already burned in my brain. Basically, when I got out of high school, by the time I was 18, I was like, let's eat all the garbage in the world, because I felt I was like denied it. It wasn't like an active thing where I said, I was denied the shitty, sugary foods and I'm going to make up for lost time. It wasn't really like that. It just became, once I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted, I lived like every day was my last, and then I would just pound trash all the time. So that routine was really set at 18. So when I started compounding that with the Vicodin addiction in my 30s, then you have a situation where I'm pounding a lot of Vicodin at a time, constipation, depression, some other side effects. Constipation is a big one there for sure. You got to take some Miralax or any type of laxative to keep the flow moving in the digestive system, especially when you're up to like 25 pills at a time. That's what happened to Elvis. It makes so much sense to me now after I went through my addiction. Yeah, Elvis was I don't know how he even lived to be 42 with the amount of drugs he was taking and the backed up clog intestines that that man had. Oh, Jesus. Same thing with Matthew Perry. Like he said his colon exploded, Matthew Perry, something like that, when he was doing his final interviews before he died of a ketamine OD or drowned in the tub because he took ketamine because he was a raging addict. And by the way, Matthew Perry is not a hero. You might have loved the show Friends, but that doesn't mean Matthew Perry's like, oh man, everything he did was he was trying to do the best he could all the time. No, that's just what he wanted you to believe too. Matthew Perry, all the hallmarks there of raging addictive problems. A guy who would supposedly he wrote in his book, he wrote that he superglued his hands to his thighs so that he wouldn't use, but he had all these assistants and he had friends' money. You know what? It's amazing. That's how long you can live if you're super rich and you are severely addicted like Matthew Perry was. He got to be into his 50s, right? Then he finally died. He had a lot of money to put into his addiction, so he never had to quit. It's the active addict's dream, really. Every active addict wants to be rich as hell so they don't have to run and gun on the streets every day just to get their next fix. Matthew Perry had the money. That's the hardest part. Finding it is usually not that big a deal unless there's some crazy dry run, which I guess happens once in a blue moon. But I don't think that Matthew Perry or anybody who's been in active addiction they're telling a lot of lies. And I did that too when I was in active addiction. But I'm thinking about his colon. That's why I brought him up. And man, the constipation he must have gone through in his life was hell because he was on massive dose. Any type of opioid. Tons of opioids at a high level will just screw up your system big time. Woo! Thinking about it now. Makes me want to go poo, actually. At any rate, I had the food addiction that was brewing in my 20s, and then I compounded it with the Vicodin addiction in my 30s. And now I'm 44, and I've been free of opioids since October 25th of 2017, right? So, wow, it has been 7 years. I thought it was 6 years. That was 2017. Yeah, wow. Okay, so it's been over 7 years free of opioids. But full disclosure, and I've mentioned this if you've ever watched a show, but since we haven't done a show in almost a year, you might not even be aware of this show. But I still take Suboxone, which is a MAT, medically assisted treatment for opioid use disorder. So I take it's a little film. It's a sublingual film. You put it under your tongue and it dissolves in a couple minutes. And that's it. And it's on a very low dose at this point. But I've been on that. When I first got straight, I mentioned the day, October 25th, 2017. That was the day I went into a methadone clinic in Maryland. I had done. Man, you want to know the power of addiction? And it could be anything, by the way. It's not just opioids. It could be cigarettes, sex, gambling. Dude, gambling addiction is the cornerstone of a crisis that is brewing in this country. If you're not aware of it at all, let me be the one to inform you. And if you already know, then you know what I'm talking about. Gambling addiction is hugely embedded in this country's culture with all the legalized sports gambling that came across over the last 6 to 7 years. Basically, since I got clean, actually, oddly enough. During that time, we've had so much legalization. It's in your pocket. It's in your phone. And it's not just sports gambling. You could play blackjack. You could play any casino game, and you could bet unlimited amounts. They give you the number. Hey, if you got a problem, call us. But they don't give a shit. People know that. We all know that. If you don't know that, let me be the first one to tell you this because it's true. So that's a nightmare. But it doesn't matter what your addiction is. When you're deep in it, you will do what you need to do. And when I was in my final days in Maryland, before I walked into that methadone clinic on October 25th, 2017, I don't think I've admitted this to many people. I drove back, actually, from where I just moved. I moved to Maryland to get clean. Let's be clear. I had exhausted all options. I grew up, born and raised in Michigan, Detroit area, and all of it was here. I was doing it in Detroit all the time. I was going down to the east side of Detroit to my guy T. Shout out to T if you're out there. Still, I hope you're doing okay. He was a nice guy. I mean, he gave me drugs that I needed, so I'm grateful for that, I guess. I would have got it somewhere else. At least I got it from somebody I could trust. But I used to roll over there, the east side, and pop in and do my thing. And when I moved to Maryland, I did it because I wanted to get away from that world. I've already gone to rehabs. Those don't work. And by the way, you can't just go to rehab for 2 weeks or even 30 days. You need to go for like 3 months. You need to have an extended stay to set a habitual routine. Because every time I went to rehab, I went to like 4 of them. I left one early. The other ones I got out after I did my time, and I relapsed like that. Because that wasn't enough. Even though we had these very heartfelt, very tender, like crying sessions, like raw emotions that are just pent up for so long with a bunch of addicts who come in and trying to act all tough. But by the time you're there for a few days, you start letting it out. Or at least the ones who actually try to want to get straight do. Some of them do want to get straight, but they still have so much trauma and built up routines of just ignoring and putting up the walls that they just can't break through. But even after all those intense moments I had, like at Brighton Hospital, for those of you who don't know, I don't think it's called Brighton Hospital anymore, but in the local Metro Detroit, Michigan area, it's a place where Eminem went, so there's probably other famous people who went there, but it was a well-known rehab, and I went there and I had a great time, and I really thought I was on the right path. I got out that day and I got fired from my teaching job. And then that night I found myself some fresh OxyContins and I was back in relapse mode within 12 hours. So that's how that works. But when I moved to Maryland, I wanted to go away from all that because all the other stuff had failed. And when I came back to Detroit a few days later, that's right, I drove back. It's like a 9-hour drive each way. So you're talking like a 17-hour round trip. It's real. I'm going all the way from Maryland back to Michigan, cutting through the Pennsylvania Turnpike in Ohio, and I'm going to meet T. Hey, T, I just moved to Maryland, but I got to get some more, man. So I drove all the way back there, got the pills, and drove all the way back. And I did that 2 or 3 times. 17-hour round trip. I didn't stay back in Detroit. I was like, I got to get my ass back to Maryland. It was so dumb, but that was the power. That was you want to wonder what you're capable of? Drugs can actually show you what you're really capable of. And addiction can show you that your drive is much, much greater than you may have ever imagined. It just matters or comes down to what it is that's driving you. What's the motivator? That's what we're all trying to unlock. What's the motivation to get the most out of myself? But first, you got to know what you want to do, too. So that also factors into desire and goals. And if you have a clear goal, like, I'm going to get sick as hell. If you've never been dope sick, it sucks. It really is it's the same old story. I'm sure you've heard this. But if you haven't, it's like the flu times 10 or times 20. And you know it's coming, too. It's not like when you get sick, you're like, oh, shit, I think I'm getting sick. But after your last dose, you know within 12 to 24 hours, you're going to get sick. So the countdown begins. It's like a ticking clock of, here it comes. Here comes something awful. The impending doom. It's like being told when you're going to die. You're like, oh, shit, I know I'm dying in 18 hours. Damn it, I wish no one had told me. Would have made this a lot easier to swallow. You know what I mean? But I did that, and that's why I walked into that methadone clinic on October 25th, 2017. In Glen Burnie, Maryland. Glen Burnie. How you doing out there, Glen Burnie? How's it going over there? Status quo? Everybody good? You guys were very helpful to me. Thank you. I don't remember the exact name of that clinic, but I bet it's still there because methadone clinics are good money. They're also, methadone should not be something that people have to stand in line at 5:30 a.m. every morning to be put on display that they are trying to recover. It's all federal law bullshit that was established during the Nixon era that hasn't changed, that needs to change. There's methadone laws that need to be changed, need to be updated, and it's just bogus. But it's not the biggest problem we got in this country these days. The United States, that is. Anywho, I walked in there and I got on methadone, and I would have preferred Suboxone, and that's what I take now. Suboxone is... You can't really abuse Suboxone, I don't think. And I have a lot of experience trying to do so, trust me. So I know I've been on Suboxone many times before I've stayed on this current run for 7 years or 6 years. But methadone is a liquid, so you sip it. You take the shot every day, and it's much more powerful. Like if you had a bunch of methadone, you can get high off of it. You could absolutely get high off methadone. But Suboxone, also known as buprenorphine for those you fellow I'm not a chemist, so not fellow, but any of you chemist fans out there, any chemistry people, it's an agonist, an opioid agonist, so it meets the need. It goes to the receptors in the neurons that are asking for that opioid. We need that opioid fixed right now. That's why you get so sick, because your neurons like, your neurotransmitters are going apeshit, and they need that fixed, and that's what Suboxone does. It replaces that, but it also has the blocker, which people have their lives saved because of naloxone. You've heard of that. That's a opioid blocker. It's amazing. Right now, I could take 10 opioids, 10 Vicodin, and I could throw them down my gullet, swallow them whole, and nothing would happen to me. I know, because it's happened before when I've been on Suboxone back in like 2016. I wanted to get high again, but I had to wait like 5 days because of the naloxone that was built up in my system. It really works. It's incredible, because you would think if I wasn't on that naloxone and I suddenly popped 10 Vikes, I'd be dead, because if I was freshly off of a relapse, right? Because my tolerance had gone down. Anyways, the methadone made a difference. It helped, and it got me straight for a while. And then, I was thinking like almost a year into it, methadone has too many properties or like tendencies that made me want to maybe try to get more of it. And I made the choice to get on Suboxone, which was going to be a tough transition, because to go from the methadone to Suboxone, I'd have to go into withdrawal, and then I'd have to spend a weekend kind of transitioning in this withdrawal state before I kind of settled in and the Suboxone stabilized me. So I did that on Memorial Day weekend, 2019. I watched Game of Thrones all weekend. Remember, that was the final season of that terrible season 8, the finale. What a disaster. I love Game of Thrones so much, but that season 8 was terrible, except for Clegane Bowl. That was tight. Clegane Bowl was the only thing they seemed to get right. But that's what I did on Memorial Day weekend. I just laid in my bed over there in Cape St. Clair, just over by the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, outside of Annapolis, and stabilized. And I've been on Suboxone ever since, taking the sublingual film. And I lived happily ever after. No, I did not live happily ever after. The problem, too, was when I took methadone, I was continuing. Remember what I said earlier about the eating patterns? I continued that. And then that got incorporated with the same process of getting high, except I would just take my methadone, and then it was my Suboxone. And to this day, essentially, I still have that routine where I take my Suboxone, I go to the store, I look around, what do I have this time? Even though I've had everything a million times over. It'll be processed, it'll be shit. I know all of this too. That's the thing. They talk about how it doesn't matter how smart you are, you can't outsmart addiction. You know what I mean? You can't. You cannot outsmart addiction. It doesn't matter if you're a genius, super duper, you know everything about anything and can just recall it with a super duper memory. It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that you can outsmart addiction at all. You just can't. You can't. And mean that you can that's the case with really any type of addiction. And even though I have all the information related to how bad these foods are that I eat, I know it. I know it inside and out. I've studied it. I've thought about it. I've considered it. I've joined groups. I even went to a Overeaters Anonymous group once. I really did, all by myself. I did. It was me, and this is back when I was still a teacher. It was me and a bunch of suburban white women. Yeah. And I definitely stood out in that meeting, I would say. You just had to be there. You'd be like, oh, wow, you're definitely the person who doesn't belong here. But I went there anyways. I put aside any shame, any fear I had, and I did the meeting. I talked about, I seem to be a real binge eater. I got a problem. And people were like, oh, I understand. And then they told me their stories. And it was a nice meeting, but I never went back. And that was 9 years ago. So I've continued those same eating habits, and I don't want to die. I want to live. I love being alive. I love Leanne. I love my life. I love doing podcasts like this. I love talking real about what's really going on. This fuels my fire. And man, oh, look at that. Mike Virginia's here. Hey, buddy. Good to see you, Mike. Thanks for popping in. Mike, I've done this show. If you're just checking in, Mike, I don't talk about it, but this is the first time I've done the show in almost a year. So I'm back on these airwaves. Very excited to see because I met Mike in 2022-ish, and now he's a regular part of my life, and that was a while ago. Time has flown by. Wow. But, Mike, by the way, Mike knows what I'm talking about because Mike knows nutrition. He knows about fitness and eating right. He knows a lot about that stuff. So I bet if you ever have any questions about that, he probably could help you out. Not to, put Mike on blast and say, hey, Mike's going to help you. I'm not saying that. But Mike knows the story. And, that's why I love doing this show, because I was talking about what's really going on. And I'm glad to be doing that. I'm glad to be here right now talking again about real life, what's really happening. Not about the best parts of me and putting it on social media, which I think we know by now in 2025 is way dated. Putting pictures of your delicious meal is fine. It seems innocent enough, but there's much bigger problems. And the more we try to put the best foot forward online, because people are all about image too, but they're not just about image. They think that your image is important to determine your intention of who you are. And I get that. I get that too. But I'd rather just be real about what we're really dealing with so that we can talk honestly, maybe learn from each other. That's what this show was all about. I mean, look at the tagline. This is the original one. Shared wisdom, education, empowerment. Look at this right here. Yeah. How do I do this? There we go. There we go. Yeah. This was the original tagline. First day pod. The first day of the rest of our lives. That was the running joke that me and Leanne, we don't say it as much lately, but that was the running gag. Hey, tomorrow's the first day of the rest of our lives. We'll get this right tomorrow. So I still take the Suboxone. I still eat shitty food. And what you get is my current physical health. And I've been given some good genes too. That's the other thing. I know that. I know these things. I'm so fortunate. I got some pretty decent genes going in my favor. And I'm still acting against my own best interest. So why is that? What would I tell my clients, right? What would I say to them if they came to me with this problem? Well, I would tell them, hey, what is the genesis of this? Where did this start? Why did you start doing it? Do you love yourself? Tell me 5 things that you like about yourself. That simple, something real simple like that. And if it's hard for me to come up with those answers, then I know it's like a lot of things. It's not complicated. These things go back to our formative years when we developed who we are. When you're in your adolescent years, your childhood years, and then you get to high school, by that point, you're starting to set the tone for the routines that define you. And by the time you hit young adulthood, in 20, 21, 22, 23 years old, the things you've learned to do and how you do them will continue to happen going forward. Yes, we can make changes. Of course we can. At any age, a 90-year-old can make change. It's just that much harder if they waited 90 years to get started, right? So I can make change. I know that, and I'm not complaining. I'm just sharing. So if you understand what I'm talking about, you get what I'm throwing down here. Love to hear from you, You can send us an email. You could comment on this video. Comment on this video if anything came up. If you want to tell me, hey, did you think about this? Give me some advice. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me, hey, dude, what are you doing? You could be doing A, B, and C. Tell me anything. Just drop a comment here on the video. Would love to get some feedback. You could also email us firstdaypod, I believe, at gmail.com. That's our show. Is that our show email? I can't remember. I think it was firstdaypod at gmail.com. And of course, rate us and review and all that stuff. But I just did one show all of a sudden. So let's see if I can follow it up with another one. And maybe with my lovely, lovely woman, Leanne, when she's 100%. So thanks for being here. Wherever you're watching this and whatever stream, if you're on my Twitter feed or our YouTube channel, thanks so much. Appreciate you. Bye-bye.